The smartest person you know is probably not rich. Meanwhile, 1/3 of American millionaires never earned six figures in any single year of their careers. They were teachers, accountants, mechanics, ordinary intelligence, ordinary paychecks, extraordinary outcomes. So if brains do not build wealth, and income does not build wealth, what separates the person at the top from everyone grinding below them? Researchers studied 10,000 of these millionaires and found the answer hiding in plain sight. The difference has almost nothing to do with what wealthy people do. It comes down to 7 things they refuse to do. It was 2017, and a research team in Tennessee was launching the largest survey of millionaires ever attempted in North America. 10,000 people with a net worth of at least $1 million interviewed about their careers, their habits, their childhoods, and their bank accounts. The team expected to find lottery winners, trust fund kids, and lucky stock pickers. The data told a completely different story. 79% of those millionaires received no inheritance at all. 8 out of 10 came from families at or below middle income. Their most common careers were engineer, accountant, teacher, manager, and attorney. Teachers made the top 5. Let the weight of that settle for a moment. Because a profession famous for modest salaries produced more millionaires than tech founders or professional athletes. The study also revealed something stranger. Only 31% of these millionaires averaged 6 figures over their working lives, and a full third never crossed $100,000 in any single year. Whatever built their wealth, it was not genius, and it was not a giant paycheck. When researchers dug into the daily behavior, a pattern emerged that looked less like a strategy and more like a list of refusals. Certain financial behaviors that feel completely normal to everyone else simply did not exist in these households. 7 behaviors, over and over, across thousands of interviews. Today we are walking through all 7 with real numbers from 2026 because every single one of them is probably operating in your life right now. Before the list, sit with why the intelligence myth survives, because the myth itself keeps people broke. If wealth belongs to geniuses, then your empty savings account is not your fault and nothing needs to change. That story is comfortable and it is expensive. The truth the data tells is far less flattering and far more useful. Wealth in America is mostly built by people of average intelligence doing unglamorous things for a very long time, which means the outcome sits within reach of almost anyone earning a steady paycheck. It also means the excuses have to go. The doctors and lawyers you assume are rich often carry crushing payments on everything they own, while the retired school teacher down the street quietly holds a 7-figure portfolio nobody will discover until the estate sale. Appearances and net worth are strangers, and sometimes they are enemies. Number 1, they never finance their image. Drive through any American suburb and count the brand new trucks and luxury crossovers sitting in driveways. In the first quarter of 2026, the average monthly payment on a new vehicle hit a record of roughly $770, and by March it crossed $800. Nearly 1 in 5 new car buyers now sends more than $1,000 to a lender every single month. The average amount borrowed for a new vehicle sits near $44,000, and to squeeze those payments into strained budgets, loans keep stretching longer. 6-year loans now make up about 40% of new car financing, and 13% of buyers in early 2026 signed up for 7 full years of payments. Consider what that actually purchases. A new vehicle can shed close to 60% of its value in the first 5 years, which means a $48,000 SUV becomes a $19,000 SUV while the loan balance is still catching up. Borrow $44,000 at around 7% for 6 years, and you will hand the lender nearly $10,000 in pure interest on top of the sticker price. You are paying a premium price plus interest for an asset engineered to evaporate. Meet Miriam. She is 32, earns $68,000 a year at a logistics company outside Columbus, and drives a 9-year-old Honda she bought with cash. Her coworkers tease her about it in the parking garage, right before they climb into vehicles that cost them $800 a month. Miriam takes the payment she refuses to make and invests it instead, $770 a month, earning the long-run average of a diversified index fund, roughly 7% after inflation, grows to about $400,000 in 20 years. Give it 30 years, and the pile crosses $900,000. One refused car payment, held for a career, is a paid-off retirement. Her coworkers are renting an image rather than buying transportation, and the rental fee is their future. The payment is also only the visible wound. Full coverage insurance on a financed vehicle, higher registration on a newer model, premium tires, brand-specific maintenance, all of it scales with the price of the machine. So the true monthly cost of an $800 car payment often runs well past $1,000 once ownership is counted honestly. Stack that against a country where fewer than half of adults could cover a $1,000 emergency, and the pattern sharpens. Millions of families are one flat tire away from a credit card balance while a depreciating trophy sits in the driveway. The millionaires in that 10,000-person study understood this instinctively. The single most popular car brand among them was Toyota. Their vehicles were bought used, driven for a decade, and treated as appliances. Nobody on that list confused a badge on a hood with a balance in an account. The playbook they followed is available to anyone. Buy a reliable model that is 3 to 5 years old after the steepest depreciation has already punished the first owner. Pay cash if possible, and if you must finance, keep the term short even when the payment stings, because the sting is the point. A payment you can barely feel is a loan you will barely escape. Then, drive the vehicle until repairs genuinely outpace its value, which for a well-maintained Toyota or Honda can take 15 years. None of this wins admiration in a parking garage. It wins something better, which is options. And options were only the first refusal on the list. Number 2, they never pay interest to a credit card company. Americans are currently carrying about $1.25 trillion in credit card debt. And in early 2026, the average interest rate across all cards sits right around 21%. The average cardholder who revolves a balance owes roughly $6,600. Run that balance through the minimum payment schedule at today's rates, and the math turns grotesque. Analysts at Bankrate estimate that a person making only minimum payments on that average balance would stay in debt for about 18 years and surrender more than $9,000 in interest, which is more than the original debt itself. Franklin learned this the slow way. He is a respiratory therapist in Tucson, sharp enough to manage ventilator settings that keep people alive through the night shift. A wedding, a moving truck, and one rough December put $4,000 on his card back in his late 20s. The balance never seemed urgent. He paid the minimum, added a little here and there, and watched the number drift upward like a tide. By 35, the $4,000 had become $9,000, and he calculated that he had already paid the bank more in interest than his original charges. His intelligence never protected him, because the trap was never intellectual, it was behavioral. The card made spending painless in the moment and transferred all the pain to a version of himself he could not see yet. What finally freed Franklin was treating the debt like the emergency it always was. He wrote every balance on the refrigerator door, attacked the highest interest card first while paying minimums on the rest, and threw $450 a month at the problem with the focus he usually saved for his patients. The $9,000 was gone in just over 2 years. And the interest he paid during that sprint came to around $2,200 instead of the $9,000 the minimum payment schedule had planned to collect from him. The month after his final payment cleared, he redirected that same $450 into his retirement account without changing a single other habit. Identical money, identical discipline, opposite direction. That pivot is the whole game, and banks are counting on you never making it. The environment is engineered against you, and it keeps getting slicker. Tap to Pay removes the last flicker of friction from spending. Buy now, pay later apps split a pair of sneakers into 4 painless installments and quietly train your brain to read every price tag as a quarter of itself. Store cards dangle a discount at the register in exchange for interest rates that can push past 28%. Each of these products is a bet placed by very smart people that you will not do the math. The wealthy households in the data refused the bet entirely, and the refusal cost them nothing but a brief moment of feeling behind the crowd. Compare that to the millionaire households in the research. They used credit cards for convenience and points, then cleared the balance every month without exception, or they skipped cards entirely. To them, 21% interest looked like a wealth transfer, flowing permanently from their families to a bank's shareholders, and they wanted no part of it. Flip the direction of that flow, and everything changes. The compounding that buries a borrower is the exact same force that builds a fortune for an investor. Every month you pay interest, you are on the wrong side of the most unforgiving equation in finance. The wealthy simply refuse to stand on that side, which raises an uncomfortable question, because avoiding debt only stops the bleeding. Something else has to build the muscle, and that something is where the next refusal comes in. Number 3, they never wait for the perfect moment to invest. Ask around any office and you will hear the same reasons for postponing investing. The market feels too high. A crash feels close. The paycheck feels too small to matter. The millionaires in the study did something almost embarrassingly simple instead. 8 out of 10 of them invested in their company's 401k plan month after month through recessions, elections, wars, and panics. 3 out of 4 also invested outside their workplace plan. None of them, out of 10,000 people, credited their wealth to a single hot stock. Read the fine print of that finding again, because an entire industry of gurus and day trading courses is built on the opposite promise. The reason this works is a math problem your intuition is terrible at. Compounding follows a curve that starts flat and ends vertical, and the fuel that bends it is time. Invest $500 a month at that long run 7% after inflation. Starting at 25, and you reach roughly $1.3 million by 65. Start at 35 instead, and the same monthly amount lands near $610,000. The decade you skipped contained $700,000. Even a single year of hesitation at the start of that journey costs you somewhere around $90,000 at the finish line. Waiting feels free. It is quietly the most expensive thing you will ever do. Timing the market fails for a reason that surprises almost everyone. The market's biggest single-day gains tend to arrive clustered inside its scariest stretches, often within days of the worst drops, which means an investor who flees during a panic almost guarantees missing the rebound that repairs the damage. Sitting out even a handful of the best days across a couple of decades can cut a portfolio's final value dramatically. Nobody receives a calendar invitation for those days. The only reliable way to catch them is the least glamorous strategy in existence, which is to already be there, all the time, on autopilot. Wall Street employs armies of analysts with supercomputers who fail at timing year after year, and yet the confident voice in your head insists you will thread the needle from your phone during a lunch break. Cecilia found this out from both directions. She works as a dental hygienist in Raleigh, And at 26, she almost opted out of her employer's retirement plan because the market had just dropped and her college roommate swore a bigger crash was coming. Her office manager, a woman a few months from retiring, pulled her aside and showed Cecilia her own account statement. 31 years of boring automatic contributions through every disaster the news could manufacture, sitting at $1.1 million. That screen changed Cecilia's mind. She started with 6% of her paycheck, captured her full employer match, and raised her contribution 1% every year. 15 years later, she has never once guessed right about the market. Because she has never guessed at all, and her balance has crossed $200,000 on a hygienist's income. The system she uses is available to almost everyone watching. In 2026, you can put up to $24,500 into a 401k and another $7,500 into an IRA, all of it growing shielded from taxes. And if your employer matches contributions, that match is a guaranteed instant return no stock picker on earth can promise. A modest match worth $150 a month, invested for 30 years, becomes about $180,000 of retirement money you never had to earn. Fidelity's own data backs the pattern. The typical 401k millionaire on their platform contributed for about 26 years at a savings rate around 17% of income. No secrets, no timing, no genius, just refusal to wait. If the big numbers feel out of reach, shrink the entry point instead of postponing it. $100 a month, started at $25 and never touched. Grows past $260,000 by 65 at the long run average. The habit matters more than the amount in the early years, because the habit is what survives raises, moves, and market crashes. Set the contribution to leave your paycheck before you ever see it. Pick a broad, low-cost index fund or a target date fund inside the account. And then commit the hardest act in modern investing, which is doing absolutely nothing for several decades. Boredom is the tax. A comfortable retirement is the refund. Number 4, they never live one emergency away from disaster. A 2026 survey from Bankrate found that only 47% of Americans have enough accessible money to handle a $1,000 emergency. 1/3 of the country would need to borrow for it, most of them on a credit card. Nearly 1/4 of American adults have no emergency savings at all. Hold those numbers next to an average card rate of 21%, and you can watch the trap assemble itself in real time. A single blown transmission or emergency room visit lands on plastic, minimum payments begin, and a $1,000 problem quietly grows teeth. Pay just $25 a month against that $1,000, and you will be paying for almost 6 years. Rashad used to live inside that cycle. He drives for a regional delivery company in Memphis, and for years, every unexpected bill went straight onto a card because there was nowhere else for it to go. New tires in March, a root canal in August, each one restarting the debt clock right as the last balance shrank. The turning point was not a raise. He opened a separate high-yield savings account at an online bank paying around 4%, named it after his daughter, and set an automatic transfer of $40 every Friday. Boring, invisible, relentless, about a year later, a $2,000 buffer stood between his family and the interest machine. When his transmission finally did fail, he paid cash, felt nothing, and kept investing without missing a month. How big should the fund be, and where should it live? The classic advice says 3 to 6 months of expenses, and that remains the destination, but the starting line matters more than the finish line. A first target of $1,000 puts you ahead of half the country. From there, build toward your survival number, which is the bare minimum your household needs for rent, utilities, groceries, insurance, and transportation, stripped of every subscription and luxury. Multiply that number by 3, and you have a realistic first fortress. Keep the money in a high-yield savings account at an online bank, where rates in 2026 still hover near 4%, instead of a big traditional bank paying a fraction of 1% for the same deposit. The account should be separate from your daily checking, close enough to reach in a true crisis and far enough away to survive an ordinary Tuesday craving. That last part is the piece almost nobody talks about. An emergency fund is not really about emergencies. It is a firewall protecting your compounding. Wealthy households in the research kept months of expenses in cash, not because cash grows, but because cash means never selling investments at the worst moment and never inviting a lender into a crisis. The fund earns its keep by what it prevents. Every fortune in that study sat on top of one, the way a house sits on a foundation nobody ever photographs. A common question follows naturally from all this. If you carry card debt and hold no savings, which fire do you fight first? The sequence that works for most households runs in 3 moves. Build the starter 1,000 first, fast and ugly, by selling clutter and pausing every luxury, because without it, the next surprise expense undoes the whole effort. Then aim everything at the high-interest debt, since no savings account on earth pays anything close to the 21% your card is charging. Once the debt is dead, redirect the same payment into the full emergency fund, and after that, into investments. Each stage hands its momentum to the next, which is why people who finish the sequence rarely slide back. Nothing about the order is glamorous. Every stage of it is load-bearing. If this is helping you see your money differently, hit subscribe. Every week on this channel, we break down how ordinary incomes become extraordinary wealth, with real numbers instead of hype. So far, every refusal has been about defense: cars, cards, timing, emergencies. What the researchers found next cuts closer to the bone, because it is about the stories people tell themselves when they want wealth without the weight. Number 5, they never chase the shortcut. Every generation gets its own costume for the same old promise. Penny stocks in the 80s, dot-com flips in the 90s, house flipping seminars in the 2000s, meme coins and zero-day options today. The costume changes, and the pitch underneath never does. Skip the line, get there in months instead of decades. The purest form of the shortcut is the oldest one. Americans spend over $100 billion a year on lottery tickets, more than they spend on books, movies, and concerts combined, and the spending concentrates hardest in the households that can least afford it. A person putting $20 a week into scratchers is spending over $1,000 a year purchasing a fantasy. And that same $1,000 a year, invested with patience, is the raw material of an actual fortune. Ask the 10,000 millionaires how many of them got there through a jackpot, and the answer in the study was a clean 0. Hope is not a strategy, and a strategy rarely feels like hope. It feels like a direct deposit. The 10,000 millionaires in the study represent a brutal counterexample, because not one of them named a lottery ticket, an inheritance windfall, or a single explosive stock as the source of their wealth. Their money came from index funds, retirement plans, and time. The most boring answer imaginable turned out to be the only answer that repeated 10,000 times. Ingrid can tell you what the other road looks like. She codes for a health insurance company in Minneapolis, and during the last cryptomania, her group chat filled with screenshots of overnight gains. Watching from the sidelines physically hurt, so she moved $18,000 of savings into a token her coworker called a guaranteed 100x. Within a year, the position was worth $2,300. Her coworker, the one with the screenshots, had quietly lost even more. Ingrid did the forensic math afterward and realized something that stung worse than the loss. $18,000 left in her boring index fund for the 30 years she plans to keep working, would have grown to roughly $140,000. The shortcut did not just take her money, it took everything her money was scheduled to become. There is a reason smart people fall hardest for this. Confidence in one domain bleeds into others, so the engineer or the surgeon assumes markets will reward intelligence the way their profession does. Markets do not care. Over any short window, luck dominates skill so completely that the smartest person in the room and the luckiest person in the room are indistinguishable. Survivorship bias finishes the job. For every screenshot of 100x gain circulating in a group chat, thousands of wiped out accounts stay silent because nobody posts their liquidation notice. You are shown the winners, sold the dream, and left to discover the denominator yourself. The academic research on retail day trading is blunt about that denominator. The overwhelming majority of frequent traders underperform the boring index they were trying to beat, and a large share lose money outright. None of this means curiosity is forbidden. Some wealthy investors carve out a small slice of their portfolio, 5% or less, as explicit play money for individual stocks or speculative ideas, with the rule that it never grows at the expense of the core plan and never gets replenished after a wipeout. The slice scratches the itch, while the other 95% compounds untouched. What separates that from gambling is the fence around it. The households in the research never let excitement anywhere near the money their future depends on. They bought the whole market, automated the purchase, and went back to their lives. Slow was never the price they paid. Slow was the strategy. Number 6, they never let their lifestyle grow as fast as their income. A raise arrives and something ancient wakes up in the brain. The apartment feels smaller, the car feels older, the vacations feel overdue. Economists call it lifestyle inflation, and it explains one of the strangest findings in all of personal finance, which is that high earners go broke constantly. Nearly 1 in 5 new car loans in America now carries a monthly payment above $1,000, and plenty of those borrowers earn 6 figures. Income was never the same thing as wealth. Think of income as water flowing through your hands and lifestyle inflation as the decision to widen your fingers every time the flow increases. Petra has watched the disease progress from the inside. She works in private banking in Charlotte, and her client list includes a surgeon earning nearly $700,000 a year whose net worth after the lake house, the boat, the 2 leased European sedans, and the private school tuitions rounds to almost nothing. It also includes a retired postal worker with $2.1 million in index funds who still clips coupons out of habit. Petra says the pattern repeats so reliably she can predict a client's balance sheet from their driveway before she ever opens their file, and the prediction runs backward from what the neighborhood assumes. Spending is visible and wealth is invisible, so the world constantly mistakes one for the other, and entire lives get organized around impressing people who are themselves quietly drowning. The millionaires in the study ran the opposite play. 94% said they live on less than they make, and most reported that their spending barely moved even as their careers climbed. Remember, a third of them never saw a 6-figure year. Their advantage was the gap between earning and spending, protected fiercely for decades. Tobias, an insurance adjuster in Grand Rapids, made the protection mechanical. Every time he gets a raise, half of the new money is redirected into investments before his checking account ever sees it, and he is free to enjoy the other half without guilt. One $10,000 raise, split that way, sends about $416 a month into his index funds. Kept up for 20 years, that single raise matures into more than $215,000, and he never felt deprived for a day. Psychologists have a name for why the upgrades never satisfy. Hedonic adaptation means the new kitchen, the bigger apartment, and the nicer car all fade into background normal within months, leaving your happiness exactly where it started and your expenses permanently higher. The thrill is a rental and the payment is a purchase. Housing is where this does the most damage because a home upgrade drags everything behind it. A bigger place means higher property taxes, higher insurance, higher utilities, more furniture, more maintenance, and often a longer commute, so a single decision made in a weekend of open houses can lock in a decade of forced spending. Social media pours fuel on all of it by turning your feed into a highlight reel of other people's purchases, most of them financed. None of them showing the statement balance behind the photo. Try the small version of the defense on your own budget. $200 a month, trimmed from the places you barely notice and invested at the long-run average, compounds to roughly $240,000 over 30 years. The house always feels one upgrade away from perfect, and the car always feels one model year behind. Wealthy people feel those pulls exactly like you do. They just decline to obey because they have seen what the gap can become. Number 7, they never stop learning how money works. Buried in the Millionaire research is a detail that ties every other refusal together. These people overwhelmingly describe themselves as continuous learners. They read about investing, asked questions about fees, understood what their accounts actually held, and could explain their own plan in plain language. Almost none of them were finance professionals. They were amateurs who refused to stay confused, and that refusal is what made the other 6 possible. You cannot decline a shortcut you cannot recognize, and you cannot trust compounding you do not understand. Financial confusion is not an accident, by the way. Entire industries earn margins from it. Complexity hides fees, jargon discourages questions, and an intimidated customer is a profitable one. Watch what a single percentage point of ignorance costs. $500 a month invested for 30 years at 7% grows to about $610,000. The same money in a nearly identical fund charging 1% more in annual fees grows to just over $500,000. Around $107,000 gone for the crime of never reading an expense ratio. That is a house down payment paid to a fund manager for underperforming a computer. The millionaires in the study asked about fees the way you would ask about the price of anything else they were buying, because that is exactly what a fee is. The curriculum that matters is mercifully short. Understand compound growth well enough to respect it. Learn what an index fund is and why cost decides so much of your outcome. Get familiar with the tax shelters available to you, the 401k, the IRA, the Roth versions of each, because using them versus ignoring them can swing a retirement by 6 figures. Know how insurance protects the whole structure from a single bad day, and internalize the difference between an asset that pays you and a liability that bills you, since nearly every purchase in your life falls cleanly on one side of that line. A person who genuinely grasps those 5 ideas knows more practical finance than plenty of professionals who talk fast for a living. The learning takes hours, spread over a season of library books and honest videos, and it pays a higher rate of return than any investment you will ever make, because it upgrades every dollar that passes through your hands for the rest of your life. Ronald Reed, a Vermont gas station attendant who died in 2014, stands as the counter-argument. He read the financial pages at the local library, understood the handful of things that mattered, and quietly compounded a modest wage into $8 million over his lifetime. Most of it left to the town hospital and library. His neighbors thought he was poor because his coat was held together with safety pins. His stockbroker knew better. When the estate was finally tallied, the quiet man who pumped gas and swept floors at a department store had out-invested nearly everyone in town who had ever pitied him, and he had done it with a library card and patience. Reed never took a finance class and never earned a professional salary. He decided decades before anyone was watching that confusion about money was optional, and that single decision powered everything else. Education, never income, was the entire engine. Step back and look at the 7 refusals in one frame and notice what they have in common. Never finance the image. Refuse to hand a card company a single month of interest. Stop waiting on the market and let time do the lifting. Keep a cash buffer standing between your family and the world. Walk past every shortcut without breaking stride. Hold your lifestyle steady while your income climbs. And keep learning until the day you stop earning. Not one of them requires talent, connections, a lucky break, or a giant salary. Each one is a decision available to a delivery driver in Memphis on the same terms as a surgeon in Charlotte, which is precisely why the surgeon can end up broke while the driver retires comfortable. The staircase everyone imagines, the one where wealth waits at the top for whoever hauls the heaviest load, turns out to be a myth. The people who reached the top mostly got there by setting weight down, not by carrying more of it up. That engine of learning also points somewhere specific next, because education has an order of operations. Once these 7 refusals clear the wreckage out of your financial life, the question stops being how to avoid losing and becomes how to build. And every solid retirement plan is built on understanding one instrument first. Bonds. They are the steady floor under every portfolio, the reason retirees sleep through market crashes, and the piece most beginners skip because stocks get all the attention. Understanding how bonds work, why they pay what they pay, and where they belong next to your stock funds is honestly the perfect starting point for anyone thinking seriously about retirement, whether that day is 5 years away or 40. We made a full video walking through everything about bonds in plain language, from treasury bills to bond funds, and if today gave you the 7 walls of the house, that video is the foundation underneath them. It is the natural next step on this exact journey. Because the truth the 10,000 millionaires kept repeating is that nobody at the top got there by being the smartest climber. They got there by refusing, quietly and repeatedly, to carry weight that was never theirs to carry. 7 refusals held for a couple of decades on a completely ordinary paycheck. The staircase is still there tomorrow morning. The only question left is what you decide to stop carrying up it.